Okay, welcome everybody to a class on work vocabulary. I think to learn lots of vocabulary, it's good to do a little bit every day. And I suppose that's good advice actually for learning anything. A little bit every day goes a long way. So let's have a look at some work vocabulary. Firstly, we say land a job. Yeah, we say land a job. Why do we say land a job? I've got no idea. But you could land a temporary job. You could land a permanent job. You could land a full-time job. You could land a part-time job. So make sure you understand these adjectives here. Temporary means maybe only a 6-month contract. Permanent means permanent contract every single year. Full-time means 40 hours a week, generally speaking. And part-time means maybe 20 hours a week. So you get less money, obviously, because you do less work. But you might get more money per hour. And of course, remember that we call your salary, we also call your salary your wages or your pay. And so they're all very useful words for work. I mean, who works without thinking at least a little bit about their salary, their wages or their pay? Okay, now another difficult word, turnover. And I want you all to understand that turnover really means the total something, usually sales or maybe stock. Well, it could be the total income that you've received over a specified period. It often means that the total income your business has received, income, not profit, but income, all of the income that your business has received over a specified period is your turnover. That's one use of turnover. But you could talk about staff turnover or inventory turnover. And these two, I want you to notice that they're still about over a specified period, but your inventory turnover or stock turnover is how often the company replaces the stock. Yeah, how often it needs to replace the stock. So if you are in the fast moving consumer, what's it called? You know, the supermarkets and things like that. If you're working in the supermarket industry, supermarkets have a very high turnover, yeah, for inventory, very high turnover of inventory. They have to keep buying more and more goods in because they sell the old lot very quickly, the old stock, yeah. And we do often call inventory stock, so I think that's quite useful. You know, it's how often you have to replace the goods that you're selling. And goods is another good word for stock, actually, goods. It's how often you have to replace those goods, the inventory turnover. But you might talk about your staff turnover. If you're in an industry with high staff turnover, that means people leave the company or the industry very often, and new staff need to replace them. So if the business has high staff turnover, it's usually a bad sign. You know, it usually says that, well, people are leaving this company very quickly. Why? Yeah, I mean, they need to keep getting in new staff to replace them. I think a lot of schools have high staff turnover because people get sick of working in them very quickly nowadays. Okay, so you've got those 3 different meanings with turnover, but notice that they're all about how quickly things change, how quickly they turn over in a specified period. So it's either income coming in a specified period, or inventory, how often it needs to be replaced, or staff, how often they need to be replaced. Okay, I think that's clear now. So if you take somebody on, you employ somebody. This is an excellent phrasal verb. I do have another course on phrasal verbs. We do have millions of phrasal verbs, so please never ignore the phrasal verb. So when you take somebody on, you give them a job. Yeah, and so you might say this company took on 50 new staff members last month. You might say, I was taken on as a junior doctor, or I was taken on as a teacher, yeah, or a potential teacher. Yeah, you were employed. That's all it means. It's a good word to mean employ somebody. Now, if you fill in for somebody, that means they're not at work that day, but you go in to replace them for that one day. You cover for them. There are 2 phrasal verbs I can think of here. And it means you do their job for them, perhaps because they're sick, perhaps because they're on holiday, but you do the job instead of them. You fill in for them, you cover for them. Okay, and so you might need to find somebody to fill in for you because you plan on going to your friend's wedding. Okay, if you're on maternity leave, this means that you are a woman usually, and that you're having a baby. And because you're having a baby, you need some time off, and you get paid, of course, not usually 100%, but maybe, you get paid during maternity leave money by the company, you know, that you work for, during that period that you are off having a baby. So that's called maternity leave. Now, menial tasks are boring tasks, boring, dull, repetitive tasks. They're menial tasks. Another word for menial tasks would be run-of-the-mill tasks, boring, repetitive tasks. I used to work in a factory years and years and years and years ago, and I did a lot of menial tasks, a lot of run-of-the-mill tasks. I remember one of my tasks was counting the page numbers. This was a factory that laminated brochures, and I had to count the page numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, because the even numbers were on the opposite side of the page, and I just had to do that all day. That menial task, counting the page numbers all day. And if it went 1, 5, I had to say stop, you know, and there'd been a problem in the machine, and you had to make sure that you had 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So I would consider that a run-of-the-mill task. It was incredibly boring. If a job has no prospects, and I must admit this job had no prospects, then it's a dead-end job. Now, for me, that job, counting the papers, that was a temporary job. It was a summer job. It wasn't part-time, it was full-time, but it was temporary. I only did it in the summers, and it was when I was a student. And so I didn't mind doing a dead-end job. But a dead-end job is any job where you have very few prospects, very little chance of developing yourself, very little chance to climb, climb the career ladder, yeah? And some jobs, there are no opportunities to climb the career ladder, so that would be a dead-end job. Okay, if you get this expression, to get your foot in the door, this means to make the first step on the path to something good. And usually we use it concerning work. If maybe you want to become a writer, something like this, and you know somebody who works for a magazine, maybe an editor, and you offer to write a few free articles without pay, just to get your foot in the door, just to try to make an entry into this industry where you're writing articles for magazines. And so you work for free, maybe for a little bit, just to get your foot in the door, yeah, just to get to make that first step in that on that career path. And so this becomes very common of course, you very often need to do something at the beginning just to get your foot in the door, yeah? And very often you might not be qualified, or you might not have any experience.